Translate the following into an equation. The number of kids is 10 less than the number of adults. First consider, are there more kids or are there more adults? In this situation, the number of kids is 10 less than the number of adults. So we know that the number of kids is less. There are less kids. There are 10 less kids. So we know that there are more adults. I came up with this equation. Why would this equation, why would that be wrong? This is wrong because these two equations are very different. If I change this to plus negative, here I have a negative 10. I can see that, and here I would have a positive 10 and a negative a. This equation has a positive a. Translate into equation. There are 10 less kids than adults. First thing we're going to consider is, are there more kids or more adults? There are 10 less kids. That immediately tells us that there are more adults. The equation that I came up with to represent the situation is this. There are 10 less adults than kids. So what are there more of, adults or kids? Well, it says there are 10 less adults. So I know that there are more kids. The equation that I came up with to represent this situation is A, the number of adults, is equal to K minus 10. I came up with this equation because if I knew the number of kids, and I took 10 away from that number, I would have the number of adults. Translate this into an equation. There are 10 more adults than kids. First thing we have to ask ourselves, what are there more of, adults or kids? Here it says there are 10 more adults than kids. So I know here that because there are 10 more adults than there are kids, there are more adults. So the equation that I used to represent the situation was A equals K plus 10. Why? Here it says there are 10 more adults. So if I knew the number of kids, I could add 10 to that number of kids and I would get A, which is the number of adults. Admission to a haunted house is $3 per kid and $4 per adult. One evening, the haunted house made a total of $72. That night, there were 10 more kids than adults. How many kids and how many adults bought tickets to the haunted house on that particular evening? Okay, let's write a system of equations. We know that we're going to need two equations, so we'll make 1, 2. And my first sentence is going to tell me my first equation. There are $3 per kid and $4 per adult. So that's part of my first equation. Then on one evening, the haunted house made a total of $72. So with that information, I know that every kid that came in made us $3. If 4 kids came, I made $12 on kids. If 5 kids came, I made $15. However many kids that come into the haunted house, I multiply $3 by that number of kids that came, and I get the amount of money that I made just from the kids. So I can show that multiplication of 3 in the number of kids by putting 3K. Then I made $4 per adult. Using the same logic, I'll put 4A. And with that combination of amount from kids and amount from adults, I made a total of $72. That night there were 10 more kids than adults. It's my next line that I'll need to translate. And go ahead and do this one on your own. This one is going to be just like the problems that we last saw. We're going to ask ourselves, do we have more kids or more adults? Well, there are 10 more kids, so I know that I have more kids. So if I were to write an equation for that, I would have to show that K was more than A. And so I would show that by putting K equals A. To show that it's more than A, I would put plus 10. Those are my two equations. I'm going to solve this system of equations using substitution. I'm going to use substitution because I already have a variable by itself that I can just substitute into my other equation. I'm going to rewrite my blue equation with a giant space for parentheses instead of the K. And I'm going to substitute my green equation into that space. Go ahead and solve for A, and then solve for K. And I'll get that the A is equal, the number of adults is 6. Now let's find the number of kids. The number of kids is equal to the number of adults plus 10. I know my number of adults is 6, so K is equal to 6 plus 10. The number of kids is 16. Now go to Khan Academy, work on systems of equations, word problems. When you finish with that, do systems of equations, then complete all your mastery challenges, and then work on extra credit. Or you can try the computer programming section of Khan Academy and you create a new JavaScript software or a new web page and just kind of play around in here. So whatever you want to do after you finish with these 3 required things is up to you.